How do you fetch data from a GraphQL API and display it within your React app? In this video, I'm going to show you how to very simply do just that within our own application, where we're going to be displaying SpaceX launches, the last 10 launches into space that the company SpaceX made using a public GraphQL API. We're going to see how to very simply fetch data using an HTTP request and the fetch library. We're going to go to the API for SpaceX, and it's at the address api.spacex.land/GraphQL. So you can use this. This is public. We're just going to be fetching the past 10 missions. And in particular, we're going to just be displaying the mission names. So we want to display those missions within our app, and we want to modify this query. So this query is what you're going to see when you go to this URL. We're going to modify this and remove all of these fields, and we just want to get the ID of each of these missions as well as the mission name. The first step to be able to query data from a GraphQL endpoint is to copy a valid query. So we want to run this query in GraphiQL. This allows us to see that it works, and we have our list, our array of launches passed as JSON data, and we want to display that JSON data here within our React project. We just need to first create a variable for our launches. This is going to be our launches query, and this is going to be a template literal string using backticks. And we can just paste in our valid query for launches. And we can fortunately use the fetch API, which is built into the browser, to make our request. Any valid HTTP client here would work, such as Axios. Now, to perform an HTTP request, we're going to be performing what's called a side effect. For that, we're going to be using, from React, the useEffect hook. So we want to call a function, which I'll write as an arrow function, on component mount. We're going to use fetch and paste in our endpoint. And this isn't just a simple GET request like we would normally perform with a REST API to get our data. We need to provide some additional options. The first one being that we need to provide a method set to post. We need to make a post request to interact with a GraphQL API. We need to set one header, and that is the content type header. This needs to be set to application/JSON. We want to get back JSON data here, which we know our GraphQL API returns. You can see it's structured as JSON data due to the double quotes around each of the properties. And we also want to include a body. And this is where we want to pass along the query to get the exact data from our API. So instead of just including a normal object, we need to convert it to a string to include it on the request. For that, we'll use json.stringify. And in this object, we want to set a property query to our launches query. So now we're making this request after our component mounts. And to get back the data, we need to use a then callback where we get the response. And we want this response to be JSON data, so we use the JSON method. And that returns a promise. We use another then callback to get back our data, which for now we'll just console log. And if we take a look, yep, we can see an object here with a property of data, within it a property of launches passed, and this is exactly what we saw in GraphiQL. Now, what's the next step to display this on the page? Well, we want to put this in state. So for that, we can use the useState hook, which we can set to just an empty array. And the state variable will be called launches, and the setter will be set launches. So to put this data in state, instead of calling console log here, we want to call set launches. And now we can output in the page within this unordered list all of our launch data. If we were to dump it on the page using json.stringify, we can see our state is in fact being updated, but we want to get access to the data property, and within that launches passed to get access to this array. So where we're calling set launches, we can pass in data.data.launches passed. Now we just have that array, which we can iterate over. So we'll map over it, and for every launch, we want to return a list item where we'll just display the mission name from launch.mission_name, and we need to include a key for each of them, which will be set to launch.id. So this is the simplest approach without any dependencies for how to get data from a GraphQL API. And since this is a great deal of boilerplate code to be able to fetch our launches and display them, it would be a good idea to abstract this into a custom React hook, maybe one called use launches that we could create, where we get back all of our launches data, and we can just create this custom hook underneath, where we can simply paste in our state and our side effect, and just at the bottom return launches. And it should work just as it did before. So this is the simplest way to start working with GraphQL from your React application. In future videos, I'll show you some better approaches, some more sophisticated approaches to handle other operations, such as mutations and subscriptions, as well as how to better manage our server state that we're bringing into our client app. So make sure to look out for those. If you found this video useful, give it a like. If you're interested in the complete guide into how to build amazing apps with React and GraphQL, check out the React Bootcamp at reactbootcamp.com, link in the description, and I'll catch you in the next video.